Hey, Irene.
Hey, Elon.
It's been a long time.
Yes, it has. That was very exciting to be in Boca Chica. You always live up to your promises about exciting times with SpaceX.
Yes. Punctuality is not my strong suit, but I do deliver in the end.
Yes, you do.
Excitement was guaranteed and it was delivered.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, we can just get right into it. So I think probably people have enough time to get on, or hopefully. So yeah, as um, basically the outcome was roughly in the sort of what I expected. And and maybe slightly exceeding my expectations, but roughly what I expected, which was or hoped for, I should say, which is that we would get uh, clear of the pad with minimal damage to the pad, and I'm glad to report that the pad damage is actually quite small and looks like it can be repaired quickly, and that we would also get significant in-flight data, particularly with respect to the pressurizing of the tanks with the propellant liquids, which is called autogenous pressurization, um, as opposed to, say, Falcon 9, which uses helium pressurization. But helium is in very short supply and extremely expensive. So it's way better to essentially pressurize with the liquid form of the oxidized raw fuel. Um, so that actually looked quite good. And we also went supersonic, which is that was no problem at all. And but the so I'm going through obviously some good news items here. The vehicle structural margins appear to be better than we expected, as we can tell by the fact that the vehicle is actually doing somersaults towards the end and still staying intact. Um, so that's also good. Yeah, so overall, I actually feel like that was a great flight. The SpaceX team did excellent work. We made a lot of progress, and I think from a rocket standpoint and pad standpoint, we are probably ready to launch in 6 to 8 weeks. Um, the longest lead item on that is probably requalification of the flight termination system, because we did initiate the flight termination system, but it was not enough it took way too long to rupture the tanks. So we need basically a much we need more detonation cord to unzip the tanks at altitude and ensure that that they basically the rocket explodes immediately if there's a if flight termination is necessary. So requalification of I'm just guessing here that requalification of the much longer detonation cord to unzip the rocket in a bad situation is probably the long lead item.
What was the time lag?
It was pretty long. I think it was on the order of 40 seconds ish. So quite long. So now the rocket was in a relatively low air density situation, so the aerodynamic forces that it was experiencing would be less than if it was at a lower down in the atmosphere, and so the aerodynamic forces would have, I think, at a lower point in the atmosphere, aided in the destruction of the vehicle. And in fact, that's kind of what happened when the vehicle got to a low enough altitude. The atmospheric density was enough to cause structural failure. But I mean, this is obviously something that we want to make super sure is solid before proceeding with the next flight. Let's see. I'll go through a bunch of notables. So we We actually at liftoff. There were 3 engines that we chose not to start, essentially, or that hit aborts. And so we actually lifted off with 30 engines, which is the minimum number of engines. Those engines did not explode, but they were just the system didn't think they were healthy enough to bring them to full thrust, so they were shut down. Then at T plus 27 seconds, engine 19 lost communications, concurrent with some kind of energetic event that liberated the outer heat shield from the engines 17, 18, 19, and 20 area. You can see this on video, actually. And by the way, if people have basically think that maybe something different from this occurred, that would be interesting to, because I know some people have looked very closely frame by frame at video, but this is the SpaceX best assessment after a week. Anyway, so something bad happened at T plus 27 seconds, because engine 19 lost all communications, and some kind of explosion happened to knock out the heat shields of engines 17, 18, 19, and 20. And the visible fire is seen from the aft end starting after this event and continuing through flight. The rocket kept going, though. At T plus 62 seconds, we see additional aft heat shield damage near engine 30. However, the engine continues to run. And then at T 85 seconds is where things really hit the fan. We see engine 6 with loss of communication to thrust vector control. Roughly from this point onwards, we lose thrust vector control of the rocket, so we lose steering at T plus 85 seconds.
And was that engine 6 that kept trying to relight too?
Possibly.
It looked like,
I don't know.
Was there one that one looked like in footage like it just kept attempting to relight over and over, which is pretty wild to see. I don't think I've ever seen that before. And it was one of the center-ish engines.
That's interesting. Okay, we do have relight logic in the center engines, but not in the outer engines, I believe. So, so basically, landing engines have relight logic. The perimeter engines don't. So that's entirely possible. Although, if the engine is detecting significant issues, it should not be going into a relight cycle.
What's your best guess as to what caused the initial engine issues? And then I guess it cascaded after that, but what do you think happened?
It's not. I think we don't know with certainty. Obviously, the rocket stayed on the launch pad for a while, and we did generate quite the rock tornado at the base of the vehicle. And our first guess would have been that the rock tornado would have caused potentially significant damage to the engines. But at least we actually do not see obvious. We actually weirdly do not see evidence of the rock tornado actually damaging engines or heat shields in a material way. But it may have, but we have not yet seen evidence of that. So for the next flight, we certainly will be taking off faster. So for this flight, we erred on the side of kind of babying the engines and just sort of gently sort of starting each engine one at a time. And there were the engines on Booster 7 were built over a long period of time. So each engine was a little bit of a unique item. And whereas the engines on Booster 9, which is next, are much newer and more consistent, and really with significant reliability improvements over Booster 7. So I think we'll see a much more robust engine situation with Booster 9. The heat shield, both, or I should say the shields, which are both force and heat shields around the engines for Booster 9 are much better because they weren't retrofitted. For Booster 7, we kind of retrofitted heat shields, whereas Booster 9 is designed in, so they're much stouter.
Will you be doing something with the Raptor chill system on the on Booster 9 differently than what you did with 7? It kind of seems like that was like an expendable part of the pad, essentially, with having all of those hoses rip free. I'm guessing that's something you would like to avoid having to replace every time in the future.
Yeah, over time, we're definitely, it needs to be like a rapid reflight capability, so there can't be any expendable items over time. It was actually just good to get this vehicle off the ground, because we've made so many improvements in this Booster 9 and beyond that it really, we really just needed to fly this vehicle and then move on to the much improved Booster 9 and later ship designs. So, but the thing that we want to make sure of probably most with the next flight is that we do not have that any kind of central nexus that controls that affects multiple engines is extremely robust and with extra shielding, so that we don't have a sort of a single point that can take out multiple engines, and for sure we don't want a single point that can take out thrust vector control, which is engine steering. So the range of detail we can go into here is like sort of level 9 rocket wizardry all the way to how do rockets work.
Understood. Can I try again?
Sure.
I can confirm that we have all been doing a massive amount of speculation out here, and I guess one of the big points that a lot of us have been wondering is related to stage separation. So
Yeah.
I guess the two-part question, like what actually triggers second stage ignition, and also the second part of that question, did Ship 24 attempt to light its engines after the destruction of Booster 7?
No, it did not. When flight termination is executed, it's executed on both. So the ship currently does not attempt to save itself. Arguably, maybe it should. That's a good point.
Yeah, it's crazy. It looks like the engine's lit after the booster let go, and after the booster finally blew up. Like there's what looks like engine ignition. Pretty wild.
That has not been reported to me in the data reviews. That it's not impossible, but it's not been reported to me. That is certainly not what the ship should be doing after a termination event. So, but like so the big things that are like important for the next flight are ensuring that thrust vector control, we don't lose thrust vector control. So sort of isolation of thrust vector control, which with the Booster 9 is a lot easier because we use electric motors to steer the engines, as opposed to hydraulic actuators where you've got a common manifold between the hydraulic actuators. So if you lose hydraulic pressure, if you it's you can lose multiple engines essentially if you have some kind of failure in the hydraulic system. The electric actuated engines will be much more isolated and not have like a single event failure, as long as they did not lose power or comms.